Okay, okay.
Yeah, we can mute everyone now.
Okay. Good morning, everybody.
Wait 1 minute. Recording started now? Okay, sure.
I'm Dr. Amit. I'm from the Department of Clinical Toxicology in Christian Medical College, Vellore. Our department comprises of a group of physicians who have keen interest in the subject of toxicology, which basically deals with the science of envenomation and poisonings. Today, I'm so delighted to represent the Department of Clinical Toxicology and to talk to you all about a little bit about snake biology. We'll go through a very few interesting facts and we'll try to make this session as interesting as possible. I can see that a lot of you have joined. I can see we have Iron Man on board. We have the KGF hero on board. I don't know his name. I think we have Lord Ganesha as well. All right.
Everything all right, no recording.
Just to start off, a few interesting facts about snakes. There are over 3,000 species of snakes that we have identified worldwide. Snakes are found everywhere over the world except in few areas like Antarctica, Iceland, Ireland, Greenland, and New Zealand. Of the 3,000 snake species we know, only 600 are venomous. Snakebite is an important problem all over the world. From 2005 to 2017, we have had over 1 million of snakebite deaths. And each year it is estimated that about 50,000 Indians die due to snake bites, which is one of the first 10 causes of mortality in India. So what do we know about snakes? You all know what this is, right? This is our taxonomy system for classification of flora and fauna. So if you look at humans, you know that we belong to the kingdom Animalia, phylum Chordata, class Mammalia, order Primata, family Hominidae, genus Homo, and species Sapiens. Now for snakes, they belong to the same kingdom, that is the kingdom Animalia. They belong to the same phylum, that is the phylum Chordata, but they belong to class Reptilia, they are reptiles. Their order is called Squamata. They have a suborder called Serpentis. Squamata includes both lizards and snakes, and the suborder Serpentis includes only snakes. There are over 20 families of snakes that we know of, over 300 species and over 300 genus and 3,000 species. So from the fact that snakes and lizard belongs to the same order, you can safely assume that snakes are evolved from ancient lizards. Okay, so now can you think of a few physical differences between snakes and lizards? If you could just we'll try to make the session as interactive as possible, so students are free to type their responses as comments. Okay, so if you look at lizards and snakes, snakes do not have limbs like lizards. They do not have movable eyelids. If you see, lizards have movable eyelids to protect the eye, whereas snakes do not have any eyelids. Okay, there are no external ear openings for snakes as compared to lizards. This is an external ear opening of the lizard. Snakes do not have external ear opening. Sternum is a bone that is present over the chest, which is present in lizards but absent in snakes. There is no urinary bladder in snakes, whereas lizards have urinary bladder. And the snakes had to do away with their left lung because snakes are more elongated than lizards, and certain body adaptations had to be done in order to accommodate all the organs inside that long, slender body. Okay, whereas snakes have scales, they have this unique venom glands, which we will see a little bit about later. The snakes are the only species which have a characteristic bifid tongue, which is split at the end. There is a specific purpose for this, which we will talk about later. Okay, now could you try and identify which one of these is snakes? We have seen what are the characteristics between snakes and lizard. Could you just type in your responses from A to D? Which one of this do you think is a snake? Okay, somebody has typed D. Oh, everybody is going for D, it looks like. Okay, now I'll show you different pictures of the same organisms. Okay, now if you look at A as an animal, it actually has legs. If you see closely, they have very small legs. So this is actually a lizard. It's called a Mexican worm lizard. It looks like an earthworm, but it's actually a lizard. Okay. Now if you look at B, this is actually an eel. Okay, they actually have some modified fins that you can see here. It's a water creature. There are snakes that live in water, which are called sea snakes. Eels are often confused with sea snakes. The other two, if you see closely, they actually have an external ear opening. This one is here. This picture is not very clear. There is an external ear opening here. And if you look at the tongue, it's actually not bifid. So these two are actually limbless reptiles. Limbless lizards. They are actually belong to the lizard family and not snakes. What I wanted to convey to you is that just with the external appearance, it may be difficult for you to differentiate between lizards and snakes, and other creatures are often confused as snakes in a common man's world. Right. So if you look at the internal anatomy of snakes, as I told you, most of the organs have undergone some kind of elongation so that they are fit inside the elongated body of snakes. Okay, the GI, the gastrointestinal tract, the lungs, the heart, the liver, and the genital organs, which are the testes in males and ovaries in females, are all elongated in snakes. The left lung in snakes is often very small. It's probably not functional in most snakes. In some snakes, these are even absent. And snakes, being of the Chordata family, they actually have an external skeleton. Alright, if you look at snakes, they have a wide variety of external appearance. They can be as big as this or as small as this. Their head shapes can be different. They can be of a wide variety of colors. So my next question to you is, which feature do you think is most useful in differentiating different snake species? Okay, is it the shape of the head? Is it the tail shape? Is it the arrangement of scales? Or is it the color? Okay, Chandu is saying it's A. Somebody is saying it's the shape of the head. Great. Most people are going for A, D or B. Very less takers for C. The actual answer is C. Okay, the scales are probably the most important in differentiating different snake species. We'll see how. So what are scales? Scales are a part of the skin of the snake. Okay, the snake skin has 3 layers, whereas human skin has only 2 layers. We have epidermis and dermis. Snakes actually have epidermis, which is over the dermis, then the dermis itself, and hypodermis, which is under the dermis. Okay, scales are special folds in the epidermis, the outermost layer of the skin. Right? Their function is to protect the body of the snake. They also help in locomotion by creating friction. We'll talk about it a little bit in detail later. It helps in allowing the moisture to be retained within the snake's skin, and it gives a wide variety of coloration which can help in camouflaging. If you look at this green snake here, which is camouflaged within the leaves, if you look at this snake which is camouflaged well in the sand, you can see how important the scales are in giving a particular color which helps in camouflage and anti-predator display. Scales can also give very beautiful colors to the snakes, and snakes, in my opinion, are one of the most beautiful creatures that can be seen in the world. Scales of snakes can be 2 types. They can be either smooth and in line with the body. If you run over a snake, if you run a hand over a snake which has smooth scales, it will appear very smooth. It will be just like a glass top. Or scales can be keeled. Keeled also means rough. The scales can be very rough. It will appear spiky. Okay, I will show you some examples of smooth scales and keeled scales. So on the left hand side you have the keel scales. Okay, if you look, these are rough, the edges are sharp, and it's a little raised from the body, all these scales. Whereas here it's a very smooth surface. All the scales are in line with each other. It's very smooth. So that is one feature of the scales that will help in differentiating between the species of snakes. Okay. Now, we told that snakes do not have eyelids, right? But their eyes needs to be protected. So for this, one scale is adapted so that it becomes completely transparent and covers the eye. And this particular scale is called a brill or a spectacle. Okay, there is a very interesting feature about the brill or spectacle which we will talk about. So the other aspect in how to identify a snake from the scale arrangement is by counting its scales. It's very interesting that, so this is the top part of the snake, okay, the top part of the snake. This is the under part of the snake, okay, which is in touch with the ground. Okay, when you look at the top part of the snake and start counting the scales either in a zigzag way like this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or in a diagonal way, you will get the same scale count. Okay, so it is counting till 17 here and is counting till 17 here. Even if you go on a diagonal till one point and start counting down in a diagonal which is right angle to that, you will still get the same scale count. It's so interesting how intricately these scales are arranged so that this geometry is maintained. And this particular scale count from one end to the other is unique for each snake species. So if it is 17 for one species, it might be 20 for another, it might be 40 for another, it might be 5 for another. So based on this scale count, we can identify the snake species. That is why I told that scales are probably the most important feature in differentiating snake species. Now another important and interesting aspect about the skin of the snake is that it undergoes skin shedding, also called as molting or ecdysis. Okay, so normal skin undergoes wear and tear, including our own skin. So to adapt for the wear and tear, there are new cells which are constantly produced. Now, as opposed to our skin, in snake, these new cells are produced in cycles. So all the cells are regenerated at one particular time. And it develops in a complete unit. So what happens is a new set of cells produce an entire new skin below the existing old skin. This requires some amount of hormonal input from the thyroid gland of the snake. Okay, now when this complete unit of skin cells are functional, the old skin which is lying external to outer to it will now need to be removed. How to remove that? The snake will rub the loose skin against a branch of a tree or a stone and then it just crawls out. During this point, the spectacle or the brill, which I told you is a modified scale which is on top of the eye, it also loosens. Now what happens once this loosens, it will give a very cloudy or blue color to the eye. I will show you a picture. And this is why at some point snakes have a very characteristic blue-eyed appearance. Okay, so this is, you probably would have seen this skins which are molted lying around in your neighborhood. And this is the characteristic blue-eyed stage of a snake just before molting. So this spectacle, which is actually a scale, has loosened and it's giving some amount of opaqueness to the spectacle. And because of the refraction of the light, it is giving a blue color. And this is after the molting has happened. It has again become completely clear. We'll try to watch a small video on how the snakes actually undergo molting. See, so here the snake is actually anchoring the old skin against a branch and is slowly crawling away from its own skin. The new skin has already been formed. See how beautiful the snake looks. This is entirely new set of skin that has been formed. Okay, and the old skin actually remains as a one complete unit. It's left behind. Okay, now for all this to happen and for other important functions like hunting prey and everything, snakes have to move, right? We already told that snakes do not have legs. So how do you think snakes move? Okay, so snakes use a number of motions to move. The most common motion that it uses is called lateral undulation or serpentine locomotion. So look, if you look at this picture, the snake creates folds on itself, and each fold is pushed against whatever object is available. It might be sand, it might be a stone, it might be a branch. It will push against whatever object and force itself forward. Each bend force itself forward. The entire snake is lying on the ground, is in contact with the ground. I'll show you videos of all this. It's very interesting. Now, serpentine motion is like walking. It's like us walking. The speed is almost like we are walking, or let's say a dog is walking. Now, if the dog has to run, then the comparator for that for a snake is side bending. Okay, in side bending, if you look at this picture, only two areas of the snakes are in contact with the ground. Only these two areas are in contact with the ground. So it's almost like the snake is using these two areas as legs or feet. They anchor these firmly to the ground and push the body forwards. Okay, like this. It pushes the body forward. After it pushes the body forward, another two areas gets in contact with the ground and it again pushes itself forward. This will give an enormous amount of speed to the snake. It can move up to 30 miles per hour speed using the side bending. Few snakes use a particular motion called concertina motion. Here what it does is, the snake will fold the rear part, the posterior part or the part behind on itself. It will fold the posterior part on itself. After that, it will straighten itself by pushing the anterior part or the front forward. Okay, this is a very slow locomotion. We'll see videos and you'll understand more. Okay, the fourth one, which is used by large snakes, is called the caterpillar motion. Okay, it almost looks as if the snake is walking like a caterpillar. Each segment of the snake body will act as legs. When you see videos, it will be more clear. So this is the first video. This is this lateral undulation, which is the most common method of locomotion. Most snakes that you would see, what in common language we call crawl, right? This is how the snake moves. Yeah, so the snake produces bends and each bend will push itself forward using the frictional force between the sand or if there is any twig around or whatever the surface is. This is why snakes might find it difficult to move over a very smooth surface where there is very less frictional force. Classically, over a very smooth glass, if you keep a snake, it will just wiggle. It won't be able to move forward because friction is very important, and the scales actually play an important role in providing this frictional force. Okay. Now, the next, that's the same. Okay, so this is the next moment. So if that was a snake walking, this is the snake running. This is called side bending. Okay, here if you see, only two parts of the snakes are in contact with the ground at any point. Okay, the other part is actually raised, and it's almost as if these two parts are anchored on the ground and the rest of the snake is being thrown upon itself. Okay, we will see a real video of a snake undergoing side bending, and you will be able to appreciate how fast it can be. So the video, only actually two parts of the snakes are in contact with the ground. You will see the trail marks over the soil. This is a slow motion. See, the head and all is actually raised here. Only this particular part and this particular part is in contact with the ground. So it leaves two trail marks on the ground. This is called side bending. Now this is the concertina motion. Here the back part of the snake is sort of crawled around itself, and then the front part moves forward. This is called concertina motion. We'll see a real snake using concertina motion. There seems to be some technical issue. That's fine. Okay, I am not able to show you the video of the snake undergoing concertina motion, but now the next is caterpillar motion. So this is almost as if the snake is walking like a caterpillar. Caterpillar actually has legs, right? So here there is no folding involved. The snake is just using different segments of the body, almost like legs, and just moving on itself. So it's so interesting how a similar kind of organisms can use 4 types of movements in order to move around. All right. So my next question to you is, do you know if snakes can see and hear? Everybody thinks yes. Of course, they have an eye, so they should be able to see. That is what you're probably thinking. But I told that snakes do not have external ear. So can they hear? So when I was a child, at least in my household, my mother used to tell me, when a snake charmer tries to, make a snake dance, the sound from the snake charmer's instrument is actually what is making the snake dance. So the snakes can hear it, is what my mother used to tell. But my father used to tell me that in the folklore that he has heard, it was told that the snakes can't hear, and it's actually the movement of the instrument that makes the snake dance. What is true? So the truth is that the most snakes do not see well with their eyes. They do not see a clear picture like we see, but they can see shapes. They can make out that there is something there, and they can sense movements. So it is true that the snake is probably sensing the movement of the instrument when the snake charmer is playing the instrument. Okay. Now there is no external auditory opening, so the snakes cannot hear airborne sounds. Okay. But they can sense vibrations through bone conduction. So if you stamp on the ground very hard, or even if an insect or a lizard or a frog is walking on the ground, that vibrations can be picked up by the snake. So it does have some sense of hearing. But both these senses are not as good as we think it should be for prey hunting, correct? You have seen all those videos in National Geographic and all, that when a snake suddenly emerges out of nowhere and is easily able to catch a prey which is moving. So if the seeing and hearing is not too great, then how is it that a snake is able to spot a prey very accurately? Now for this, snakes have specialized sense organs which we do not have, and most other species don't have. It's so amazing how snakes have these 2 organs called a pit organ and a Jacobson organ. The pit organ is seen in only a few snakes. It's a heat sensing organ. Instead of seeing images, it can actually see heat. It can see temperature. It senses the infrared rays that is being emitted from animals. And the Jacobson organ, in addition to the nose, will help in detecting smell. We will see how. So the pit organ is seen in some snakes called pit vipers. Okay. So those are found on either sides of the snake, just behind the nose. So this is the nostril of the snake. This is the pit organ. This is of course the eye. Okay. So it's basically a opening which is initially narrow. This is the outer part of the opening. This is the skin of the snake. This is narrow and becomes wider as it goes deeper. It's about 1 to 5 mm deep. This depth is about 1 to 5 mm. So here, inside the pit organ, there is actually an outer cavity. So this is where infrared rays enter. Then there is a membrane, and then there is an inner cavity. Okay. So this membrane is lying between 2 cavities which are 2 different temperatures. So suppose there is some infrared rays coming here. This area will be hotter, right? And this area will be colder. So this membrane is able to detect this difference in temperature between the outer cavity and inner cavity, and then convert it into nerve signals, which the nerve fibers take to the brain. That is how the snakes are able to detect heat and almost see the thermal picture of animals. Okay. It can also sense where the animal is. How is this possible? Just like our eyes, because there are pit organs on both sides of the snake. If the signal is only coming to the left pit organ, that means the animal is towards the left. If it is coming towards the right pit organ, that means the animal is towards the right. If it is coming to both the pit organs, which is a zone of overlap as seen in this picture, that means the animal is straight ahead. That is how it can localize where the infrared signal is coming from. Okay, so this is one of the adaptation that a snake have to locate prey very accurately. The second one is called a Jacobson's organ. Okay, now snakes do have a nostril. Okay, they can sense smells. So unlike sound and unlike light, a smell is sensed when a particle goes and sits in that nose. It's the same for humans also. So if you were to smell a flower, particles from the flower actually have to get airborne, come and sit inside your nostril, cause a chemical reaction. That is how you detect a smell. Same thing happens with the nose of the snake. Okay, so airborne odors are actually sensed by the nostril. Now the Jacobson organ is actually found in the roof of the mouth. So this is the mouth, this is the tongue coming out of the mouth. The roof of the mouth is where the Jacobson organ is. It's actually connected to the nostril apparatus of the snake. So what this does is, have you seen the snakes flicks their tongue very often? If you have seen a snake, you might have seen that they flick their tongue very often. What they're trying to do is they're trying to get some of these particles that are there in the air. They get stuck onto the tongue. They take it inside their mouth and keep it on the Jacobson organ. And then the Jacobson organ is also able to detect these moisture-borne odor particles. Okay, these are not airborne particles. These are moisture-borne because the tongue has some saliva on it. No? So these are able to detect the moisture-borne air particles. Now here is why the bifid tongue is important. The bifid tongue is important because again the snake will be able to detect whether the smell is coming from the right side or the left side, and thus detect the where the smell is coming from. Okay. So this is how the snake is trying to catch some odor particles. The odor particle, when the tongue is retracted, the tongue comes in connection with the Jacobson organ, which is also called the vomeronasal organ. And then it detects the moisture-borne odor particles. So these are two special sensory systems that the snake have in order to locate their prey very accurately. So we saw how a snake spots its prey. Once spotted, how do you think the snakes hunt? Okay, so we all know that some snakes can be venomous. They produce venom, but not all snakes are venomous. Okay, but in snakes which have venom production, they have specialized glands called venom glands, which are actually modified salivary glands. So venom of a snake is nothing but a special kind of a saliva, and this venom is injected through a specialized tooth called the fang. Some snakes can spit the venom as well, but those snakes are not found in India. Now if you look closely into the venom apparatus of a snake, so this is a modified salivary gland or the venom gland which is present. There is a muscle which is present called the compressor muscle. So as soon as the snake bites a prey, this muscle will contract and cause the venom which is here to eject through the venom duct into the fang. The fang is actually hollow. It has the venom duct going through it. Okay, and the venom will actually enter the prey which the snake has bitten. All right. Now it's also amazing how there are different kinds of fangs according to what each snake likes to eat. For example, in this group of snakes called elapids, of which cobra is a common example, they have this particular kind of fang. If you want to know the name, it's called a proteroglyphus fang. Okay, those are present in the front, very small, and what it actually does is it actually has to hold on to a prey for a long time. So even when they bite humans, they tend to hold on to the humans for a long time because it's a small fang. The amount of venom that is being injected will be very slow, so it has to hold on for a long time in order to inject enough venom in order to kill the animal. Now this particular group of snakes called the vipers have very long fangs. Now the problem with very long fangs is how are they able to close their mouth? These fangs are called the solenoglyphus. How are they able to close the mouth? The teeth will injure the lower jaw, right? So these fangs are designed so that they will fold upon itself when they close the mouth. That is how they are able to accommodate this fang. And these fangs have a wider bore as well. So they just need to bite the prey once. It will inject a large amount of venom in one shot, and that is enough to immobilize the animal. The third group of fangs are in the posterior part of the mouth. It's a rare fanged snake. So these are present in snakes which likes to eat smaller animals like rats, lizards and all that. So they actually bite the animal and start chewing. The animal has to be chewed and taken inside the mouth. Only then the fang will inject venom. Okay, so this is called a ophistoglyphus fang. So there are different types of fangs as well for snakes. Now what does the venom actually contain? They actually contain proteins. Okay, you would have heard of carbohydrates, fat and proteins, right? Proteins are made of amino acids. And these proteins form substances called enzymes. As you all know, enzymes are chemicals which cause a chemical reaction to happen, which catalyzes a chemical reaction, a biological chemical reaction. Or they can be toxins. Now, snake venom can have cytotoxins which act on the cells and cause cell death. So I will show you pictures of what cytotoxins can do. They can also be neurotoxins, act in the nervous system and cause paralysis, or hemotoxins which act on the blood and its molecules and cause bleeding. There can also be snakes which cause injury to the muscles, which are called myotoxins. Okay, so these are few examples of what the toxins can do to humans. This is probably a snake with a cytotoxin which has bitten the human, which has caused death of all the cells here. That is why there is discoloration, there is some swelling, all the cells here are dead. Now this is example of a snake with hemotoxin that has bitten a human. So there is bleeding that is happening. This is probably going into the urinary bladder of the human, and there is all blood in the urine. Okay, this is a gentleman. He is not sleeping. He is unable to open the eye because probably a snake with a neurotoxin has bitten him. Okay, so these are examples of all the toxicities that snake venom can cause to humans. Now my question is, if venom is so toxic, why is it that the venom inside the venom gland or the venom that comes in contact with the mouth of the snakes not harm the snake itself? Any ideas? To answer that, we should remember that venom is a protein, right? And proteins, just like egg for example, is digested by the gastrointestinal system of the snakes as well. So the venom that enters the oral cavity goes into the stomach and the intestines of the snake and gets digested. It is not harmful. Are you able to hear me?
Yes. We can go.
Yeah. I do not know where you lost me. I was telling that snakes venom can have cytotoxins, hemotoxins and neurotoxins. I showed you pictures showing examples of what this can do to humans. And I am talking about how why venom is not harmful for the snake itself. Okay, they are digested by the gastrointestinal tract of the snake, so it will not be poisonous to the snake. Now inside the venom gland, the venom is stored at a particular pH, and at this pH, you all know that enzymes require a particular pH to work at. So at this particular pH, this venom will not work. Only when it's injected into the bloodstream, only in the pH of the blood will the venom get activated. Also, there are a few other things. For example, the snake venom glands are positioned so that the venom will flow back into the snake's body, not forward. Only when it bites and the compressor muscle contracts does the venom get injected. Second is there are antibodies against the venom that is formed in the snake. So a snake's venom will not be harmful for that snake itself. And third is that few receptors. Receptors are basically proteins on the cell surface on which some of these poisons toxins might act on. There is modification of these receptors in the snake so that the venom itself will not be able to act on these receptors. Okay. So I will not take much of your time. I just want to conclude by saying that snakes are actually very unique, beautiful and fascinating animals, and they are very rarely harmful to humans. Now if you want to know about more about the harm that it can cause to humans, I would suggest you take up medicine, join us in our department, and we are happy to help. My last few slides is about why we are organizing this session for you. So 2 years ago, the World Health Organization had recognized snake bites as a neglected tropical disease. Not even in your school curriculum, even in the MBBS curriculum, snake bites are not dealt with in great detail. And we feel that because snake bites is primarily a problem of the tropical areas, where whereas we usually learn Western textbooks, right? So this is a neglected problem, and WHO had recognized that. And since that year, we have been observing September 19th as International Snakebite Awareness Day. So this is our third International Snakebite Awareness Day that is coming up on this Saturday. And our aim in conducting these programs is to inculcate some amount of interest in the young generation, you guys who are the future doctors, the future biologists, in snake biology and snake bite, so that there is more research, more interest, and we can act together to prevent snake bite deaths. So that is the contact to our Poisons Information Center that we run. It's a 24/7 service. The number is toll free. We usually get calls from physicians and people who are bitten by snakes or people who have taken some poisons, but any of the students are free to call this number at any time if you want to discuss anything further regarding snake bites. We also have a website, and you are also free to mail us in this email ID, and we will be able to reply to your mails. I thank you all for your patient listening. I can take questions. If you could just type them out in the... Yeah, if you can raise the hands, that's also fine, or you can type them out in the chat box. Having said that, I have a disclaimer. I am not a biologist. I am not a herpetologist. I am a physician who has some interest in snake bites, so I'll try my best to answer your questions.
There was one question: when snake sheds its skin, why is it white color? Why is it not the same color as snake's skin?
So we did not talk about how does the snake get this coloration. So the color is actually not a property of the outer layer of the skin, it's a property of the inner layer. So when the snake skin gets older and it starts getting detached, these color cells are actually retained within the snake itself. So only the outer layer of the skin is shed. That is why the shed skin does not have that particular color.
What are the precautions for snake bite?
Okay. So we did not talk in detail about preventing snake bite. Maybe we will include in tomorrow's session about prevention of snake bite. The first and foremost thing to understand is that snakes do not want to bite humans. Okay. Because none of the snakes have humans or any large animals as their primary prey. They want to either eat eggs, they want to eat small animals like lizards, they want to eat other reptiles, they may want to eat some birds, but none of them want to actually hunt down a human and eat them. So if a snake bites a human, it's only because the snake is afraid of us. We did not give them enough signal, and they got scared. As a defense mechanism, they are attacking us. So the first and foremost thing is to make sure that snake knows that you are around. Okay, so when you are walking around, if you make stomping sounds, if you are walking, say in dark in a field, for example, where you know there are snakes, you can make stomping. You can walk with very firm stomping steps. All right. So if you take very stomping steps, that vibration will actually be sensed by snake. Snake will get alerted and go away from the area. Second is to wear footwear when you are walking around. Third is to use a bright light torch when you're walking, so that you can actually spot snake, and the light from the torch will actually also be sensed by the snakes, and the snake will know there is some danger and they'll go away. So those are the other thing is to prevent any kind of rats and things around the house, because the snakes would like to hunt the rats down. So there are a lot of rats around, automatically there will be a lot of snakes around. Okay, so that is another thing. So those are the main things that we can do to prevent snake bites. Okay. It's also important not to kill a snake if you spot one. For one reason it is unlawful in India. You are not allowed to kill a snake. Second, it is very important for the biosystem to function. Okay, and many of the snake species are actually endangered. So it's very important not to kill a snake. They are usually very harmless. Unless you go to them, they are not going to come to you and bite you. All right.
Does the arrangement of venom glands influence the shape of the head?
It does influence the snake shape of the head. We will need to go in a little bit more detail about the bones which are present in the snake skull, etc. to go into that, but it does influence the snake of the shape of the head. You can mail us. I can send you material regarding the same so that you can read it in your spare time.
Which is the most venomous snake in the world?
So there is nothing like the most venomous snake in the world. It's very difficult because we don't have units to measure the severity of a venom of a snake. So I do not think I can answer that question.
Why some snakes are more poisonous?
So the problems that a snake bite can create is dependent on what the composition of venom is. Okay, so some snakes produce predominantly cytotoxic venom, some produce predominantly hemotoxic, some produce predominantly neurotoxic, some produce all three together. So it's and the amount of venom that is produced also differs from snake to snake. So all these factors will affect how poisonous a snake is. You should call venomous the snake is. So there's a slight difference between the term poisonous and venomous, but yeah, all these factors will contribute to how venomous a snake is.
How snake can lay eggs?
So we did not go into the biology of reproduction of snakes. I do not think we have. I mean, that's a whole new topic. If you could just mail us in the email that we had shown, we can send you material that you can read later. So there's a question about if a snake bites another snake, I assume that the question is, will the other snake die? The answer is yes, if the other snake is from a different species. So the venom of one snake is not venomous, not harmful for the same snake species, but for a different snake species it can be harmful.
When the poison is removed from the snake, it will be formed again.
Yes, just like if you spit out your saliva, more saliva will be formed. If the venom is removed from a snake, more venom will be formed. It might take some time, but more venom will be formed.
Is venom and poison the same?
It is not the same. I am very happy that somebody asked that question. It's a difference that even many doctors fail to understand. So a poison is a substance which by itself consumed by the human or comes in contact with any part produces significant adverse effect. Okay, so for a poison can be a chemical compound, or some compounds that are produced by plants, etc. But venom is a substance that is causing adverse event if it is injected into the human. So if you take snake venom and a human consumes it, it will not cause any adverse effect. So snakes are usually not poisonous; they are venomous. Okay, so there is a difference between the term venom and poison.
How to show them we are harmless?
So we cannot really. So the primary defense mechanism of any animal is to approach any foreign body as a potential threat. Correct. So there are ways by which there are snake catchers, for example. There are herpetologists who can slowly adapt the snake into believing that they are actually friends, but it's not something that we as lay people should be trying. So all that we can do is to show our presence, to make our presence felt by the snake, so that the snake senses our presence, and it will go to a safer zone, and they will not consider as a potential threat.
If snake bites us, what is the primary aid to take?
Okay, so we did not talk about that because we hope that none of you gets bitten by a snake, or none of you will ever have to see somebody getting bitten by a snake. We hope that you are able to prevent snake bites. So prevention is always better than cure. Now, if a snake does bite you, you could first thing to do is to remain calm. Keep the limb immobilized. Wherever you are bitten, keep that limb immobilized. Do not move that limb, because the more you move the limb, the more the blood flow to that area, and the more chance that the venom will go through the bloodstream to other organs. Okay, so remain calm. Keep the limb immobilized. Wash the bite area with soap and water thoroughly. Okay. After that, you have to go to a hospital. There is no other thing that you need to do as a lay person when you get bitten by a snake. Your aim will be to get to a hospital where an expert can give you help as soon as possible. Time here can mean life. Okay, there are effective treatment for snake bites available today, even in the remotest parts of India. So your aim should be to get to a hospital. If you are able to, you can. You should not put a tight tourniquet. There is this concept that if you put a tight tie with a thread or a rope above the area of the bite, the venom will not spread. But that is a wrong thinking. You should not do that. It is best to just keep the limb immobilized. You can put like some wooden piece and splint the leg. Maybe if you can attend tomorrow's session also, we can add a few slides on snake bite prevention and the first aid, and that might be more useful. Or you can visit our website. There are a lot of information available on snake bite prevention and first aid there.
Go down now.
What are snakes afraid of is a question. So as I told you, most animals, including snakes, consider any other animal as a potential threat. Okay, so that is one thing. I do not know I don't know if anything else that student wants to know specifically. We already answered what's the remedy after snake bite. What influences the difference in composition venom? So it's just like what influences our say for example our facial features. Okay, so it's basically to do with the genes that is present in the different species, which eventually will affect the different proteins that is produced by that species, and that affects the composition of the venom. So it's basically a species to species specific difference. How to remove total venom from a snake permanently? You cannot remove total venom from a snake permanent, but there are these snake charmers who actually try to take off the venom glands, take off the fangs. All those are actually illegal. It will hurt the snake. There is no need to remove total venom from a snake permanently. It's natural to have venom in a snake. It's their natural defense mechanism and a natural prey hunting mechanism. So we should not try to remove the venom permanently. Yeah. So there's a question about how the snakes will survive after removing the fangs. The snakes, it's just like removing a couple of our teeth, right? We can easily survive. The only thing is the snake will not be able to use their venom effectively after that. So they'll have to hunt prey and chew it to kill it rather than to use the venom to kill it. So it can still survive.
Go down.
How do snakes?
Sorry.
Yeah. Somebody has asked a question about why anti-venom is not given as vaccines. I will modify that question. So why are there no snake vaccines against snake venom yet is probably the question. It's a very important question. There are people working on it. We are not yet successful in developing vaccines against snake venom. Maybe a decade later you will come up with a vaccine.
Go down, man. Go down.
When are venomous snakes safe to handle? Answer is never.
Go down, man. Is king cobra more dangerous to people?
So all venomous snakes are dangerous to people. You cannot. I do not know of a way where you can differentiate which snake is more venomous or not. All venomous snakes are dangerous. All venomous snakes can cause death.
Go down. Go down. Go down.
After snake bites, in what time we want to get treatment? The answer is as early as possible. If possible, within the first 30 minutes. If possible, within the first 1 hour. The idea is to get to a hospital as early as possible. Even if it is a non-venomous snake that has bitten you, you will not be able to identify it on your own. Even if you feel fine, you have no way of telling whether 1 hour later you will start having some symptoms. So it's always safe, it's always prudent, it's always necessary to get to a hospital as early as possible. Lifespan of a snake will differ from species to species. If you remove the venom, there is no harm if the snake bites. You cannot remove the venom of a snake, so you should not remove the venom of a snake. Why snakes are biting human beings? I already answered that. It's more of a defensive mechanism. They're just getting scared and biting us because they sense us as a potential threat. Venom flows as fast as the blood flows in the bloodstream because venom is being transported mixed with the blood. Okay, that is why it is flowing as fast as the blood.
Tomorrow's session what time? At 11 o'clock.
Tomorrow's session will be at the same time, 11 to 12. We will try to have senior staff nurse with us who at the end of the session can talk to you, may not be in great detail, but a little bit about snake bite prevention and basic first aid after snake bite. So we will try to include that in tomorrow's session.
Does cobra has diamond?
No, cobra does not have diamond. It's a myth.
Good one, man. What attracts snake into houses?
Okay, what attracts snakes? So most snake species do not want to enter our houses. One thing I told you that attracts snakes to houses is if you have lots of rats running around. Snakes love rats. If there are rats, there are snakes. Okay, so if there are a lot of rats in your houses, snakes might enter to hunt them down. It's usually the species of snakes called krait that come inside their house, inside your houses. So if you spot a snake inside your house, one most important thing is to make modifications so that they do not enter again. Make sure you lock the doors, make sure there are no rats around, all those things. And it is better, in case you are in an area where there are a lot of snakes, it's better not to lie down on the ground. It's always better to lie down on a cot. If you are lying down on the ground, you can use a mosquito net. Mosquito nets have shown to prevent snake bite. So there is some kind of a barrier there, and the snake will go around. It will not come and bite you if you use a mosquito net and you're lying on the floor.
Do snakes take revenge?
Snakes do not take revenge. No.
Is non-poisonous snake harmful?
So snakes that do not cause venom is usually not harmful. They will not cause any serious toxicity. uh, it might cause some local pain, but there is no way for you to understand which snake is venomous and which is not. So you should not think that after a snake bite I do not have any symptoms, I don't need to go to hospital. You should go to hospital as early as possible, and only a trained medical professional can identify if you're having any toxicity.
Do you have any snake repellents?
So far, we do not have any snake repellents. No, there are things going around telling that high frequency sounds can keeps snakes away, but there is no good scientific evidence to prove this.
Does snake sleep?
Huh?
Does snake sleep?
The snake sleeps. Most of the times, the snakes are just digesting the food that they eat. So they do something which is similar to sleeping. They are very inactive most of the time. Only once the food is digested and it's time for the next prey, they go hunting. Most snakes.
That's all beginning, no, ma'am?
Yes, it's all beginning.
That's all beginning. Ma'am.
This is my status.
That's all taken, ma'am. That's all from
That's all
beginning.
taken.
Go to the end, ma'am. End.
Okay, I think that you all will have a lot more questions. Our aim through this talk is not to answer all the questions that you have about snake bite. It is more to inculcate some interest in you. Now that you have so many questions, you all can go back and read. There are a lot of resources available online. You can visit our website. You can mail us. You can even call us anytime. We'll be able to help you. As I told earlier, we hope that at least some of you end up becoming doctors and have some interest in snake bite, interest in developing new treatment options for victims of snake bite, get involved in community programs to prevent snake bite, disseminate this information that we have given you, and learn more and disseminate that information as well. I think we will close the session if there are no more questions. You are all free to attend tomorrow's session and day after's as well, if you would like.
A spotlight Master Chaitanya. She wants to pass. You want to spotlight her, Master Chaitanya. You take, ma'am. Ma'am, do you want to say a few things, ma'am? Any comments about the session, ma'am? Sir, can we stop, sir? Over.
We can see if we can send a recorded video. We have the video recorded.
Want to say something?
We can probably share it with you. We have your email addresses. We'll all get an e-certificate.
If a person wants to say something about the session.
While send, okay.
You were talking, I said, okay, okay.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Somebody speaks.
While sending you the e-certificate, we'll try to send you the link to the video as well.
214 are there. Now, it was 270.
Okay, thank you everybody. Thank you all for your patient listening. I hope to see some of you at least for tomorrow's session as well. And have a good day.
Tomorrow we start off 10:30.